Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Essay Writing in English. We are in week 12 today. Again, we have two videos for you this week. In the first one, I'm going to go over vocab from the last unit, which was this one here. Or you did narrative paragraphs. So I'm still reading your narrative paragraphs. You guys are doing a nice job with your writing this semester, so thank you for that. So I'm gonna, and this video is gonna be a little different from other ones. It'll start the same, going through the vocabulary and collocations, but then instead of doing a new unit in the book, I'm going to go over some of your writing that you've done this semester, starting from the beginning. So go back to writing practice for the weeks 1, 2, and 3. And I have just pulled out some different sentences, and I'm going to show you how I would fix those. You may recognize some of the sentences as ones that you wrote. Don't worry about that. Your name is not next to the sentence. These are common mistakes that everyone makes, and that's why I chose them. And so by showing you how to fix them, hopefully all of you can learn how to avoid that type of mistake in the future. All right, so let's get to the vocabulary real quick, and then we can work on our sentence fixing. So number 1, to depict. Let me grab my marker. To depict is to show something. To show something. So this movie depicts Bill Gates when he was a boy, for example. It shows him when he was a boy. Valuable, something's valuable. We know that it is important. Grief, you feel grief when something terrible happens to you. So if someone dies, for example, so that would be a negative thing. A rumble, I heard a rumble from the other room. That's a noise, a loud noise or some sort. To flow, lava flows out of the volcano and down the volcano and into the town. So that means move. You applaud after a concert, for example, and that's because you're happy with it. So that's a positive thing. Someone came up to me, right? I was walking downtown and this man came up to me and gave me a flyer for a restaurant. So he approached me. If you switch something, you just change it. A hem, this is probably a new word for most of you. Hem is what you do to close. If your pants are too long, your mom might hem them, and so she folds them in and then sews them to make them short. That is called hemming, and that's something you do to close. Sometimes when my pants were too long when I was a kid, my mom would hem them. If you witness something, you see it. And if something collapses, of course, the building collapses, it falls. Scary is related to being afraid. Casually, if something's casual, it's not formal. A tragedy we know is a bad event. And if you hug someone, a fancy word for hug is embrace. So if they say embrace can mean hug, it can also mean kiss. So if you say, oh, the couple after being apart for 2 years, when they saw each other, they embraced, like they hugged and probably kissed too. So collocations, something daunting means it seems like it's really overwhelming. It's a lot of difficulty. You'll have a lot of difficulty doing it. And so that is a way to describe a task. For many students and teachers too, studying online at the beginning of the semester, when we were told we would be doing everything online, for many people that was a daunting task. Hopefully, though, it has not been too difficult. I'm actually quite enjoying it, and seems like students are not having too many problems. So it was daunting at the beginning, but it turns out that it's not so bad. Like everything, once you get used to it, things turn out to be better than you expected. So to set up, you set something up. If you get a new computer, you have to set it up. If you buy a new TV, you have to set that up and hook it up to cable and well, it used to be DVD player, but I guess people don't really use that now. You could set up Netflix on your computer, right? You log in, download the app, all of that stuff. It could be called setting up. To take a deep breath, the doctor tells you to do this when he puts his stethoscope on your back, and he'll say, take a deep breath. A nightmare is a scary dream, so that's usually not something you would call valuable. But a lesson can be valuable. If somebody taught you something, you'll hear, I learned a valuable lesson. Someone taught me a valuable lesson, an important lesson. What's going on? Common way, kind of slang, common way to ask someone how they're doing. Hey, what's going on? What's up? What's going on? You could also just use it to really ask what's happening if there's a problem, like, oh no, what's going on? Tell me what the problem is. To swallow my pride. To swallow my pride. Everyone feels proud sometimes. Sometimes you have to swallow your pride and ask for help. Don't be too proud to ask for help. Swallow your pride. A natural disaster, so like a flood or an earthquake or a tsunami, things like that are natural disasters. A wrinkled shirt, right? If you pack your shirt in your suitcase, it's probably going to be wrinkled when you take it out, so you need to iron it. She screamed at the top of her lungs. The top of her lungs means she's really screaming loudly. Yesterday, my daughter screamed at the top of her lungs when my son was chasing her. And without any hesitation at all. So without waiting at all, just doing it directly without stopping to think, without any hesitation at all. So for example, my son was playing with a ball and the ball went into the road and he started to run for the ball without looking. And without any hesitation at all, I ran and grabbed him. I did not stop to think about it, or I did not wait to see what would happen. I just ran and grabbed him. Okay, so those are vocabulary words from last week's unit. That was our last regular unit for writing. Today, I said I'm going to go through, let me pull up my Word document here. Here we go. I'm going to show you some things here. Okay, so this goes back to weeks 1, 2, and 3. And remember, if some of these are yours, do not feel bad about that. That is not a problem. This is my way of explaining some of the changes that I would make and why and how I would make them to help you become better writers. And so this first one here says it is to require only 500 milliliters of water and ramen. So we're talking about making noodles, right? So the it here is talking about noodles or the meal, right? So what we're going to do here is change this to it requires the verb here, right? So we don't want to say it is to require. We can just simply say it requires, right? And then the rest is totally fine. And I'm just going to copy and paste that because I don't even need to touch that. So it requires only 500 milliliters of water and ramen. Now it's perfect. All right, this one, please avoid much cooked the noodles. So what this is saying is you don't want to cook your noodles too much. And there are a couple of ways you could say this. So the simplest way is to say, please, if you want to use avoid, you can avoid, you need a verb ing. So we're going to take this verb cook. I'll copy it and I'll paste it in here. But I can't say avoid cooked. Avoid verb ing, avoid cooking, what, the, and noodles are always plural, right? We don't just have one noodle, we have many noodles. So please avoid cooking the noodles. Avoid cooking the noodles too much. Okay, why is that doing that? I don't like that. So please avoid cooking the noodles too much. Now there's another way you could say this, and there's one word that will capture the meaning of cooking too much, and it would make the sentence even shorter. Please avoid. If you cook something too much, you can use the word overcook. Please avoid overcooking the noodles. Please avoid over. That's a very well written sentence there. Very good way to say that. It's nice and short, doesn't have too many words, but in truth, both of these two here are perfectly fine. Please avoid cooking the noodles too much. Please avoid overcooking the noodles. Okay, so two ways you can do that one. This way doesn't require much ingredients. A couple of things here. So this way we'll keep. So the writer here has just explained a method for cooking and now is referring back to that method. So we're saying if you do it this way, that doesn't require too many ingredients. So this way, and we'll keep doesn't, that's fine. Again, here we don't need the full verb, the infinitive here. So this way doesn't, we'll keep require. And now ingredients is plural, countable. So we have to change much. And what should we change that to? That's right, many. This way doesn't require many ingredients. And now it's perfect. As a child, I couldn't even dream of playing a musical instrument because of poor household conditions. This one, I'm not sure about what you mean by poor household conditions. Maybe it means not having enough money. It's just a guess. I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking that maybe that's the situation. So if that's the case, so as a child, you could say couldn't even dream, but I'm going to make it a little shorter. I never dreamed of playing a musical instrument because, you could say because we were poor, if that's what you mean. If that's not what you mean, then there would be a different way to fix it, but that's one option. As a child, I never dreamed of playing a musical instrument because we were poor. That was my case when I was a kid. I wanted to play an instrument, but we didn't have enough money. So my parents said, sorry, you can't learn. I wanted to play the saxophone, I think, but it was too expensive. So as a child, I never dreamed of playing a musical instrument because we were poor. Okay. Cell phones were not used other than people calling or send messages. Okay, so in this sentence, the writer is telling us the only things cell phones were used for. So they're saying there's two reasons people used phones: calling or sending messages. So if you want to use other than, you can. We just need to fix it a little bit. So here's one way to do this. Cell phones were not used other than for calling people, or, and we need to keep our verbs similar here, parallel, calling people or sending messages. So that's one way you could do that. I'll bold that so it's clear. Cell phones were not used other than for calling people or sending messages. So that is totally exactly what the writer was trying to say. But there's another way you could write this to have the same meaning. And I'll show you that right after I take a sip of coffee here. Okay. For this one, you could also use, because we're saying only two things, phones were only used for two things. And so we can use that word only. And so what I'm going to do is this. Cell phones were only used for, right? And I have for again, so I'm going to need that gerund, that verb ing. So I'm going to copy that and put that in. Let's check it. Cell phones were only used for calling people or sending messages, right? So these two sentences say the exact same thing. They have the exact same meaning. The second one is just a little bit shorter, and it might be easier to read because it is shorter. And when you have a lot of these short words in a row, if you can avoid doing that to make it a little easier to read, that's great. But grammatically, these are both totally fine sentences. And a native English speaker would read those and say, "Oh, that's a native English speaker wrote those sentences." So again, you can tell how easy it is to read by how long it takes me to read. So number one, cell phones were not used other than for calling people or sending messages. Cell phones were only used for calling people or sending messages. All right. This one here is a title. Let me move this up a little bit. This was a title, and we talked about titles this semester. So titles are not a full sentence, right? And the important words need to be capitalized. And this one is not a full sentence, but it has a period, right? And we don't need a period. So first let me copy and paste this, and then we'll fix it. Okay, so first we'll take off that period. My big mistake on the trip. Okay, now we need to capitalize the important words here. Big is a small word, but it's an adjective. So it's an important word. Mistake, that's a noun and big part of the title, my big mistake. On and the, so we have a preposition here and an article. Those do not need to be capitalized, but trip again does. So this is how you would make this title perfectly capitalized and punctuated. My big mistake on the trip. Okay, I can still remember a big incident many years ago. I was 20 years old at the time. All right, so this is a full sentence, right? That's good, that's okay. This though is not a full sentence. So this needs to get this idea of, I understand you want to tell us when it happened. But we're going to take that and connect it to the first sentence. I was 20 years old at the time, and we can keep that. That one's fine. I was 20 years old at the time. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. So first, let's copy and paste this. And I said we're going to leave that third sentence there. Okay, how am I going to do this? I can still remember a big incident many years ago. This is okay, but we need something here to tell us, to kind of connect these two ideas. I can still remember a big incident, and the way to do this is that happened many years ago. I can still remember a big incident that happened many years ago. And then we get some background information. I was 20 years old at the time. Okay, and now it's perfect. And this, that happened, you just keep that, and then you could change this, right? You could use this same sentence and change this in different ways. I can still remember a big incident that happened last year, right? And maybe I don't want to talk about my age because If it was just last year, it's not really that important. I can still remember, here, I'll do a new sentence, my own sentence. I can still remember a big incident that happened last year. Whoops. I was shopping downtown, and then blah, 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 and explain what happened. Another example, right? So I'm changing the time. Changing the time when it happened, and I'm changing, the first example was age. This is what I was doing. So lots of different things. This is why I say it's always important to practice, to copy the structure and change it out, because that structure can be used over and over and over again, and native speakers do it all the time when we speak and write. Right? We have these set phrases that we've heard before and that come naturally to us. And you can have that too. It just takes practice. And also noticing, right? To really notice things. Pay attention to things when you're reading. All right, so this one, my friend asked me why you took the subway. Okay, so there's two things here. We're writing dialogue, so we have to be careful about our punctuation. So my friend asked me, this, you need a comma. My friend asked me, and then because this is your friend's sentence, it has to be capped. Why you took the subway. So how do we do questions in past tense? We need that helping verb do, and it's past tense, so do becomes did. Why did you, then regular, take the subway? My friend asked me, why did you take the subway? Now, if you don't want to do these quotations, if you don't want to quote your friend directly, you can still do that. And here's how you would do that. My friend asked me why now we don't need the do did. We don't need the helping verb. My friend asked me why I took the subway. Right? In this case, you're not quoting your friend, so you don't need those quotation marks. But you're still telling us the exact same information, just in a different way. My friend asked me why I took the subway. My friend asked me, why did you take the subway? See how that works? All right, let me move this down to the next page so we have a little more room, and let me move that down. Okay, my friends have never been on an airplane, and I was one of them. So this writer is talking about first time on a plane. His friends had never been on a plane, and he also had never been on a plane. So there are a couple ways to do this. And so first of all, we've got a tense issue here. This happened in the past, and you're talking about past before. At this time in the past, when I was getting on the plane, I had never been before. So this needs to be had never. So my friends had never been on an airplane. And you are not one of your friends. Your friends are a different group of people. And so you can't say I was one of them. So, but what you can say is this: my friends had never been on an airplane, and neither had I. My friends had never been on an airplane, and neither had I. Another way to say this is if you can include yourself in with your group of friends and say, none of us had ever been on an airplane. And that's even shorter, but it's given the same meaning. So you're including me and my friends together in this phrase, none of us. None of us had ever been on an airplane. Or my friends had never been on an airplane, and neither had I. This neither is a little tricky for students who are learning English, because we always hear this. This is a little aside, but I like kimchi, right? And then so A says, I like kimchi. B agrees. B says, oh, me too. Whoops, me too. Or so do I. But if it's a negative, I don't like kimchi. Here, you cannot say me too. That is wrong. You would have to say me neither. You're agreeing, but it's a negative because of the don't, right? Let me put this in red so it's very clear that that is wrong, right? Me neither. And so you see here, I'm using that neither here too. So my friends, because it's a negative, had never been on an airplane, and neither had I. Okay, this is very useful. This works in lots of situations, so keep that in mind. If someone says, oh, I don't like blah, blah, don't say me too, say me neither. You're agreeing, but it's a negative. You're agreeing with the negative thing. Okay. All right, last one. After boil, put the noodle and powder. Use chopsticks to stir the noodle. Okay, so for this one, let me copy it and paste it here. After the student has just boiled water here. Is making ramen, right? So after you need to have a gerund here. So after doing what? After boiling the water, we'll add, just so it's clear. After boiling the water, you can say put, but usually when we talk about cooking, we like the word add. So add the do we just have one noodle? No, it's plural, right? Add the noodles and powder. You know, ramen has a little powder packet that it comes with, and we have already talked about that in this paragraph. So we're using the, add the noodles and the powder, and then I'll put then here to make a little transition word. Then use chopsticks to stir what? The noodles. To stir the noodles. And why is that doing a little boiling? Okay, after boiling the water, add the noodles and powder, then use chopsticks to stir the noodles. Let me bold that, and there you go. That's what you got. So I will save this. I'm going to put this in the file section in Canvas if you want to have a closer look at this. And for your attendance this week, please choose 3 sentences from here that I fixed, and change it out to make it your own sentence. Okay, make any one of these. Choose 3 sentences, not this title one, right? And change it out and put that into the comment section on Canvas, or on YouTube rather, here under the video. Okay, and for your homework, let me grab the textbook. You're going to do this writing. It says timed writing, but don't worry about that. You're going to be writing on your own. So read the prompt below, brainstorm, and write a short narrative paragraph about it. And this is what you're writing. Choose a specific event from your childhood. Think about why you remember it. They give you some examples here: first day of school, or a difficult class, or a birthday party. Describe the people, places. Use vivid language to help us imagine that you were there. And that's going to be your writing practice 1 under video 1, right? Video 1. Online discussion, writing practice 1, and that's here, page 97 in your book. Remember to choose 3 sentences from the feedback I just gave you and write those in make your own examples in the comment section. Okay, that covers everything for this video, and I'm going to post a second video with some questions and online discussion for you to do. And as always, let me know if you have any questions. Look forward to reading your writing soon, and have a great rest of the week. Bye.